Welcome back. I think, as Mark says, college baseball central fans. No Mark, no AJ, no Alex this week. You got the skeleton crew going with myself and Jake. It's you pretty much picked the two worst that you could have if you had to pick. It definitely would have been us two. But we're gonna dominate the show, and in what 60 years you're gonna be talking to the grandkids about today. I guess it's only appropriate that the weirdest week in college baseball recent memory is followed up by the weirdest weekend rotation in the history of the entire show.
Yeah, I mean, this is the two people that watch the most college baseballs because they don't get tagged down by girlfriends and kids and stuff like that. The only thing we're married to is the game itself now.
Yeah, you don't see me going down to meet somebody in California or busy at some kid's softball game. I'm committed.
I know. I would definitely miss my kid's softball game to watch mid-major baseball.
Jake, I know that you missed a lot of things yesterday. I think you skipped work to go watch Campbell UNC Asheville at like 3 o'clock yesterday. Um,
Um, I think I was just a time thief, if I'm being honest with you. And that one was every bit as advertised from a Campbell standpoint. A lot of these kind of mid-majors have had hiccups, and we'll kind of get into that later. But I mean, against a team that Campbell should dominate, they dominated. I mean, 16 runs is always very eye-opening, especially in conference play. And I think Campbell is really setting up to be the host of kind of these mid majors because it seems like every year they have to get two or three, and as these teams kind of falter, Campbell just seems to stay steady. Kind of how I had UConn a few weeks ago. Everything I thought UConn was is Campbell.
yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but of course ECU stumbling the last month, maybe even 2 months, maybe the entire year, and then you have Coastal Carolina stumbling last night. It only helps Campbell when that regional conversation comes because we've kind of been saying that one of those three is going to get the nod, and it's going to be hard to give it to more than one of those guys. And I think Campbell's kind of always had that leg up, and it's only getting farther. It's kind of like Saturday at the Masters. We're
Yeah,
separating right here.
they're separating. They're I mean, I think they're almost as much of a host as some of these SEC teams are, just with how they play down the stretch. I don't really see any team kind of giving them trouble either. There's no one that even jumps out in that division.
Yeah, the only question might be, are they a top 9 through 16 or a 1 through 8 or
Yeah, and if the committee tries to punish them with the super regional or putting some tough SEC team there, that would be the only thing.
and then I guess the secondary question within that is, can Campbell actually host a regional? I don't know if anybody's actually been definitive with that.
I think that they can because I know that they've had a few minor league games there. So from a facility standpoint, I think it's up to par.
All right. Well, speaking of up to par, how about Clemson over Louisville last night? Clemson beats them 6-3. It was actually a little earlier in the day, so it might have stuck up on some people on that drive home from work when you kind of had to swerve through traffic to see Clemson nail that one down. Clemson's very hot right now, but I know you're kind of a Louisville lifer.
I am a Louisville liver, and it seemed like they had it figured out there for a little bit. They had the Eddie King home run, but I think Clemson is just too hot right now with how they've been playing. It seems like they're just on a mission to get back into the tournament and kind of erase everything that Monty Lee built at Clemson. One kind of dig on Clemson is I never know if they're playing at home or on the road because they exclusively wear those white pants. But I think that this one is more of a story, and people are going to kind of make this out that Louisville is going to be out of the tournament. But I think that this is just more that Clemson is in the tournament with a series like this, not that Louisville is necessarily out.
Yeah, we were saying in the Twitter Spaces earlier this week that Louisville is kind of the ultimate case study of the ACC because they're on the edge of hosting, but they're also on the edge of missing the tournament. The narratives are just so weird with this Louisville team. People love to pick them apart. I think they might be the definition of what an ACC resume looks like.
Yeah, and then they've had a few kind of whispers about their coach heading to Alabama, so I'm sure that that's really not helping them either. But again, I think that they're a lot more in than people realize, and especially with how some of these SEC teams that are on the bubble have been playing the last few weeks. I think Louisville kind of just the teams around them haven't really done anything to get up, and they're not going to put a mid-major over Louisville just with their resume that they had at the beginning of the year, especially how they played in Houston.
Speaking of Houston, which is in Texas, Texas Tech over Sam Houston State. These weekend series late in the year, it feels very SEC in November, like when a lot of power programs are playing these goofy backyard teams. But that's what happens when there are conferences without an even number of teams to play every weekend. I don't know which Big 12 team doesn't have a baseball team. We don't even have to think about it too much. But Jake, I'm sure you were all over this one because you're a Texas homer.
Yeah. Sam Houston's probably going to likely be in the tournament. It's either them, ACU, or Grand Canyon. So really good practice from some of the other Big 12 teams that have played just like schmucks. And this one was an absolute shootout from the word go. I mean, the ball was flying around there. And I think I really came away with this game more impressed with Sam because it seemed like every time Sam plays somebody decent, like Houston or LSU, they just get embarrassed. And then every time they play somebody bad, they kind of handle business. So Tech Tech showed me a lot with their pitching staff and lack of it, and then Sam Houston also showed me a lot with a lot of their at bats. I mean, they had a ton of competitive at bats. I mean, double-digit runs, especially against a Power Five team that's likely in the tournament. I mean, you have to feel really good as a Sam coach leaving this game.
But you know who went yard for Tech?
Cash.
That's right, Gavin Cash. Kind of under the radar prospect across the country just because of some of the guys in the SEC and the ACC, but
We
he
had
is
it
up as
first. We
advertised.
were. I think he was my Big 12 Conference Player of the Year pick.
Yeah, I don't know LeBron, but we'll review the footage on that. Big 12 teams that are hot, but another one now it's not making any sense to me where the Big 12 is playing another goofball, Oklahoma State over East Tennessee State. Why are so many Big 12 teams playing mid majors this weekend?
I mean, they don't have as many teams, obviously, so they try and start the same week as SEC ball. I think they actually start a week earlier, so you end up with just these oddball games, and I don't really understand it, if I'm being honest with you. I don't know why you would go and schedule Southeast Missouri State, East Tennessee State. I mean, granted, there's not that many teams that you can schedule, but this benefits Oklahoma State in no way. Like their RPI fell even though they won, and I didn't come away any more impressed with Oklahoma State in any way, shape, or form. They just kind of went out there, took care of business, which again, in these Big 12 series where they play out, is easier said than done. I mean, we've seen a lot of teams struggle with these mid majors.
Yeah, Oklahoma State has quietly won, I think, 8 or 9 in a row here, and it's not against anybody that you really consider to be a good team. They're just kind of hanging around that ranking, and they're really all over the place. I know we have them in the high teens, but then I think D1 has them in the low 20s. So they are very, very spread out, very hard to get a read on this Oklahoma State team. And playing East Tennessee State, who has a losing record and is obviously not a power program, isn't going to get me excited to rank them a little bit higher. But I'm sure they'll rise still because they've won so many in a row.
Hey, know, since you hit me with the who homered in the Tech, who homered in the Oklahoma State game?
I Rock.
Yeah, Rock had a home run.
Wow. And
I
I'm
know,
sure
shocking.
that might have been the difference maker.
But I the one thing I do kind of come away impressed with Oklahoma State is Tyler Walford, the transfer from Midland College. I mean, the last month he's been on an absolute tear. I think his batting average is up over 100 points, and I think he's been a really good bright spot in Oklahoma State. Which I mean, they've been a totally inconsistent team this year, and he's one of those guys in that middle of the order where if you get into 5, 6, 7 and have the depth there, I mean, you're going to be a dangerous team in a regional.
Yeah, I think everybody knows how dangerous that place is when they get a regional in their building. We'll see how dangerous they are if they have to hit the road this year, just because of nobody knows who Oklahoma State is. They're very, very Big 12.
What if they did a Fayetteville regional and it was like a reverse
That
of
would
last
be
year?
electric. And I think we were saying that if Oklahoma State were to fall to a 3, you could get Oregon State in there as a 2, and it would just be you would decide who OSU is. You would get the Arkansas fans riled up every game in that regional. It'd be great.
I know. I think that instead of looking for these storylines that they always do in Texas, they need to look for who Arkansas fans would just treat the most like crap. Like that would be my favorite regional to see, is just watching Arkansas Twitter explode with Rock Riggio and a few other chippy people.
College baseball is just better when Arkansas Twitter is finding IP addresses and tracking people down and threatening them. That's just what it's all about. We just talked about Oregon State. Them losing to Utah last night was one of the more surprising results, I think, on the entire board. Not necessarily because I think Oregon State is cemented as a top 25 team, but because I think Utah is just the definition of a bottom feeder in the Power 5.
Yeah, they had 16 hits, which again for Gary Henderson, which is a pitch first kind of coach, felt very, very just way out of left field for them. It came out of nowhere, especially because Oregon State's been playing so good. I think they had won 14 of 16 heading into the game, and they were up early, and it seemed like everything was going to go their way. And just the pitching doomed Oregon State, which has kind of been their saving grace, it seems like, because their bats have kind of gone up and down, and they always seem to get the big hit, but their pitching has just been tremendous. And credit to Gary Henderson. I don't know how you inspire somebody to play in May with a losing record against a top 25 team, but I credit to them. I think that they lose the next two games. But again, this one's going to be a big one for people who watch Pac-12 standings, and it's kind of turning into a repeat of last year for Oregon State, where they're handling their business, taking 2 of 3, and the teams around them are going to be sweeping.
Yeah, it's a very, very puzzling team to get a hold of. Very similar to the other OSU and Oklahoma State, where they're kind of just benefiting from when other teams lose, and they kind of slide up. But then they do have some impressive wins under their belt. I know Mark is quick to inform us about those, but I think Oregon State got a little too close to that hosting conversation where just they kind of had to go back to where they really belong, and as a strong 2, maybe even a really high 3 if things really go bad the rest of the way. But I don't think that they're a top 16 team or capable of entering that conversation for a longer period of time.
I think that they still are, just because there's really not that many teams on the West Coast that are capable of even being in a conversation to host. I think it ends with Stanford, and that's about it.
Yeah, that is a good point, because eventually they have to have somebody out there. It's not going to be – it's kind of like the College Baseball Central staff map. It's you are the farthest west other than Mark, and Mark lives in Oregon and you're at Texas. It's not going to look like that. So there's going to be somebody that kind of benefits from just simple geography out there.
Yeah, and all these Texas teams have to have regionals to go to. That's the other thing,
course,
too.
Yeah.
They're even more not set up to host.
Talking about NCAA tournament, who's in, who's out, Oregon falling to USC last night. Oregon is in the top 25 pretty much all across the board there. But USC, their RPI was, I believe, about 70 heading into this one, and they needed to not only win last night, but they probably need to win this series to start feeling good about making the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team, if you would have told me a month ago, I would have said that they were squarely in, but at 26, 20, and 1, and then 12 and 10 in conference. I am reading that, Noah, so I didn't have that off the top of my head. They kind of do leave something to be desired. I mean, they're a very, very freshman-led team. I think they had 80 or 90% of their hits transfer out or graduate. So this is going to be a team that was going to have learning pains, and it was really tremendous to kind of go out and see them play against Oregon. And as we talk about teams that we want to host, I do not want Oregon to host. I think that's going to be a terrible environment. Somebody's going to go up there, and it's just going to be very boring, like with Stanford host. Like, no one cares about Oregon baseball. So as someone who's a fan of, fans and stuff like that, I was really kind of glad to see Oregon lost.
Yeah, me too. I know that I picked USC in our pick 'em this week just simply because I kind of have an anti-Oregon thing going on right now. I don't know anything about them, and every time I pick them, they lose, and every time I pick against them, they win. But right now, I'm 1-0, so I'm hoping that kind of momentum keeps carrying. I want USC in the tournament. I know that Mark and I were talking about it last week where I have 7 Pac-12 teams in. He thinks it's only 6. Jake, you might even be in like the 4 or 5 range.
I think I'm at 5.
Yeah, so the more Pac-12 teams that kind of scrape things together and do what they can to get off that bubble, the better for me. I know that you should actually probably be pouting about this one a little bit because this hurt you temporarily. Long way to go.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good transition for the other kind of team on the other side of the city for him, UCLA losing to Cal. That one definitely was way out of left field for me. I did not see that one coming.
This UCLA team is quickly playing themselves to the playing golf in those Los Angeles golf areas in June. Cannot get a read on this team at all. They were one of the teams that I had penciled into Omaha at the beginning of the year, just strictly based on talent and how they were young, but they had 1 year of experience. So it was kind of like almost their 2017 Oregon State kind of year to burst onto the scene. But then they can't hit the ball. It's so frustrating to watch this team play because they have the talent and they're playing in the Pac-12. It's not the SEC where, talent only gets you so far. They should be able to win more games than they've been winning.
They just lose. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason for them to lose all these games, but this is going to be a very cherry pick stat, but they haven't won a Pac-12 series since the middle of March because they had a couple rainouts and splits and stuff like that. But this is just not a good baseball team, and it's kind of sad to see because they should, on paper, be the team of the Pac-12 that everybody kind of wants them to be, and they really struggle against bad teams.
Yeah, it really is a shame because I think that they get propped up a little bit because they look cool. Like they have a nice logo. They're a power brand, nice uniforms. You want them to be good,
Mm-hmm.
but they just aren't. It's really, really frustrating to watch, even just watch this team. Sometimes you can watch a bad team and have fun, and they're just not fun to watch.
Yeah, they're not a bad team. I think that's the more frustrating part for me is they're not even a bad team. They just play bad. And then the flip side of that is Cal. I think this might be the first time we've ever mentioned Cal on the show because of how irrelevant that they seem to be across all athletics. Like why this game was even close is just beyond me.
Well, not a close game was Dallas Baptist beating Middle Tennessee State by 11. I know that you are pretty high on Dallas Baptist because you have to have somebody from the state of Texas to prop up, and they are maybe the only ones right now.
Yeah, and they kind of had just an onslaught of runs there in the middle of the inning. I was following the game and they were down to 1-0 in the fourth, and I went down to go look at Caglione and came back up and they were up like double digits. And I was like, "What the hell just happened?" And and I think that that's just kind of the microcosm of the season for them. They start kind of slow and they'll fly under a little bit of the radar, go out and just beat the doors off of everybody. And I'm really excited to see Dallas Baptist next week at UTSA. I'll be there for that game to kind of see them up close and personal. Because as Steve was kind of hinting, they had a little bit of a swagger to them when they were walking into Rice. So I want to see if I can see that.
Yeah, DBU is a team that another one that it feels like every time I trust them historically, they let me down. So I'm a little bit cautious to jump on, but they are performing really, really well lately, and I think that they might have that opportunity to host just simply because the state of Texas needs to host regional
Mm-hmm.
in the NCAA bylaws.
Yeah, and I think it's either them or UTSA are going to be the hosts, and DBU's definitely separated themselves from UTSA the last month.
Yeah, I worry about UTSA maybe playing their way out of the tournament the way they've been kind of playing lately.
Yeah, I think that they got Schloss cursed, and we can kind of transition into that game. They had to come back against Rice, and Parker Smith absolutely shoved for the Owls going 7 innings, and then the Rice bullpen blows it immediately. If Rice had even half of a bullpen, I think that they would win that game. And we're talking about a very different scenario for UTSA. But it seems like ever since Coach Schlossnagle at Texas A&M said that they were a tournament team and one of the better teams that they had faced, they've really just kind of flopped and not looked good in these Conference USA series.
Your classic SEC coach curse is when you compliment the other team, it's actually not a compliment at all.
Yeah, you're
And
cursing them.
yeah, uh,
But
SEC, Tennessee 12-3 over Georgia yesterday. This one was close for a little while, and then Tennessee just kind of started leaving the yard.
yeah, and this is kind of what I think at the beginning of the year everyone expected to have happen. And obviously, a lot of things have happened from Georgia and Tennessee. But if you would have told me in January that, hey, Tennessee almost run rules Georgia on Friday night, I think that every single person would be like, yeah, like more of the same. And we're seeing this Tennessee team peak right at the right time, rolling into SEC play. And they, I think, are kind of working their way into the conversation host, especially with how South Carolina has been dealing with some of the injuries and how they've played. I mean, Tennessee has just gone out and dog walked every single person that they've played. I mean, it's not, they've left no doubt in every single game.
Yeah, I'd really like to see a Tennessee LSU series right now. I worry about the true strength of their pitching, but it was on last night, and we know that they have the talent to get there. But as soon as that they start winning the games like 20-0 that they were winning last year, that's when I'll be fully bought in. But they are hard to keep out of that top even 10 right now. I know we have them. I think we might even have them at 10 because it's so easy to rank them. Like they win one series and we push them way up.
Yeah, we have them at 10, just in front of West Virginia and Duke. And again, they're just kind of an exciting team to watch. I think that they kind of have a little bit of UCLA in them where they look great, play great. They got a bunch of blue chip MLB guys. They're finally starting to figure it out. I think this one almost reminds me of Arkansas last year. I mean, I know that their kind of downturn started a little earlier than Arkansas's, but they have the talent. They're figuring it out at the right time. Once they figure it out, I don't think that there's anybody in the country that doubts what Tennessee baseball can do this year. And I don't want to say Omaha because they haven't really beaten anybody like good yet. That kind of makes me
Yeah.
see like raise my eyebrows like if they were to beat LSU, but it feels like the Tennessee of old.
Yeah, it definitely looks right. We just got to see if they play right. They did, of course, sweep Vanderbilt, but that was kind of the what got it going. I agree. I'd like to see them play somebody sooner rather than later to really, really prove that they are all the way back.
Yeah, and I think the sweep of Vanderbilt almost reminds me of Texas Tech, where it's like listen here, son, I'm your dad type scenario, not necessarily a talent. Because, I mean, Tennessee just always gives the business to Vandy, it seems.
All right. Speaking of dads and probably not being good enough, East Carolina beating Cincinnati 9-3 was kind of big for them. Of course,
No, it
nothing
wasn't.
for East Carolina is too big because of the strength of their conference, but it's nice to see them win a game. I know Ashley was saying it was nice to win one without any heart attacks in the middle of the game, which is always a great sign when you're a tournament lock.
Yeah, and I think with their schedule down the stretch here in the last 3 weeks that they really are a closer to a tournament lock. But, I mean, they have really struggled the last month and a half, and I really don't think that they should be a tournament host. And I think if they played in even the Conference USA, I don't even think they'd be in the tournament itself. I mean, when I saw them at Houston, they just didn't have the back end bullpen help at all. I mean, they had guys that were really struggling to throw strikes, didn't put the ball over the plate, and they made Houston look like a top 25 team. And ever since then, I don't know if it's Houston hype as much as just kind of we want to like somebody in the American, and it's not ECU. But again, it's Cincinnati. They have Cincinnati, South Florida, and Memphis, I believe. So not exactly like a murderer's row.
Yeah, they picked a bad two to have on for the ECU segment this week because I know that you and I are about as low on ECU as you can get, while still hoping. I think you hope that ECU is good, but I really want them here. But I have so much trouble buying into their resume, and I believe they're 4-5 against the RPI top 50 right now, and I don't think they have another game against that group. They might have one down the stretch. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
and the only two good teams in their conference they lost to. Like why would like how are we even talking about them being a host? Like the only two teams, which conference is to me is really where it matters because you're really not messing around with your pitching staff like a lot of teams do. I mean, these are the games that you really want to win. And when that happened, Houston and ECU, or Houston and Wichita State both beat ECU.
I agree with what you're saying, but I have to say that if you're an ECU level team, you have to care more about the midweeks because that's where
Mm.
you get your product, your big wins. You had that win over North Carolina, which was big at the time, but it's faltered so much. And now I believe they're 0-2, maybe even 0-3 against Campbell. That's who I think they play. I think they play Campbell one more time,
Yeah.
but they're 0-2 against Campbell. 0-1 at least against Duke. They haven't really beaten anybody. I know they're 0-1 at least against NC State. Where are the good wins for this team? I don't know where their 4 wins against the top 50 are.
I think they had one at Houston, which they honestly, I mean, Steve and I've talked about it. They should have had two at Houston. They should have got Houston cheating, but for some reason, I guess Cliff Godwin's a man of the people and wanted to win the game the old-fashioned way. But they really should have won that one on Houston trying to pitch a guy without the roster. But I think that North Carolina series with Campbell, it reminds me a ton of like Florida State and TCU. How for a while we looked at those teams. It's like, okay, well they beat Florida State, like they should be good. It's like, wait a second, no, like North Carolina is not in the tournament. Like we shouldn't be holding them to some pedestal because they beat an ACC team that's going to miss the tournament. Like I think that's really their only crowning achievement. And then beating shitty teams in the American, like okay, Tulane.
And even that win against North Carolina, I think we all remember it because it was so great because North Carolina blew it. They
Yeah.
arguably should have won that game.
That one was absolutely a terrible series for North Carolina, and it was kind of the beginning of the end for them.
Beginning of the end, we keep talking about Oklahoma, but they're playing West Virginia, and play what's it called? I don't know. I can't even think of the name of the song. Is it? Come on, Jake. You
Like
know
that
it.
funky music, white boy.
No. The Country Roads. That's what it's called. Well, are you listening to Country Roads right now?
Oh, by John Denver. Yeah, I mean this had everything of the makings to be kind of a trap series for West Virginia. Oklahoma did go out and sweep Texas at home, and they really at times have kind of looked like a tournament team, but they just have so many bad losses stacked against them. And West Virginia just went out and took care of business. I remember a month ago, someone on OU radio had said that OU had everything in front of them to make the tournament, and we're kind of seeing why they were so bad at the beginning of the year because they just can't beat anybody. It seems it's kind of a sad sight to see.
Yeah, this one was a fun one to tune into. I didn't stick around for long because it was a blowout kind of quickly for West Virginia. but it was kind of a packed house. It kind of reminds me of Oregon State. Not, Oregon State, they fill out the crowd a little bit more, but they were all wearing their winter jackets, and I felt a little chilly when I was watching the game, as opposed to maybe turning on Arkansas, Mississippi State, where I'm much warmer again. It's amazing to go through these kind of climates when I flip through the channels.
Yeah, and we can talk about weather for the Florida State. I mean, for the Florida A&M series, but I think that my favorite thing about West Virginia's baseball stadium is the mattress store that's just ready to go if they win something and they need to burn some mattresses. They can just go across the street. And I think that's going to be a fun regional because they don't get regionals all that often. So when they get them, they always seem to kind of take advantage of them.
Yeah, not really relating to the regional at all, but when Iowa State and West Virginia playing football, there's this, like, it's passed between the fan bases. There's this gas can that says Riot Bowl on it. That's like a trophy.
They should do that with Arkansas, where they just have it's like an IP address trophy.
LSU Auburn last night. LSU shutting down Auburn. I think Auburn got a little bit hot and got a little too maybe confident in themselves when they beat South Carolina. LSU is still the number one team. Paul Skeens threw 40 strikeouts last night.
He had 28 balls thrown in 7 innings. It's just incredible. The thing that's so weird to me about he's kind of worked himself into being the number one pick over Dylan Cruz, and I know that a lot of scouts that I've talked to said that they value hitters from the collegiate level more than pitching, but he is just such an anomaly. I feel like you almost have to take him one overall. Like, he dominates and shoves every single one. I think the story of this game, though, was LSU's pitching staff LSU's hitters only getting 3 runs, with Auburn kind of punting this game. I felt like it was going to be a blowout, and obviously they won, but 3 runs felt a little low for this lineup.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a weird one because I was waiting for them to have that big explosive inning. We've seen it so often from this LSU team where they kind of hang around for a while and then they have that big offensive inning. Usually there's a Tommy White double or home run involved, and it never really came. But you make an interesting point about Paul Skeens being that number one overall pick. We've spent the last year and a half saying that if the Pirates do anything other than take Dylan Cruz, they should probably disband the franchise and start over. But I haven't necessarily thought about it, but it is an interesting choice now that they have between Dylan Cruz is, of course, batting right around 500, and then Paul Skeens, who goes out and strikes out 20 batters a game almost. It is.
Have you seen that chart of it's like strikeouts to balls thrown, and he's like almost off the chart?
I think I remember scrolling past it on Twitter. So in a sense, yes.
I mean, he's just an insane talent that, honestly, if I'm a regional or even a super regional, I think I punt Friday because I think that there's no way that you beat Paul Skeens, with the way that LSU does. You save your ace for Saturday and try because I think you can beat Ty Floyd, and then whoever they decide to roll out on Sunday, it seems like it's just like a snow cone flavor of the week for them on Sunday. But I would definitely punt it. I think that I don't know why you would even try.
That's kind of my favorite thing about the postseason format that we have is how teams manage their pitching staff. I can't help but think that if you're LSU playing a 4 seed like Central Connecticut State, how tempted are you to throw Paul Skeens? I would say not very much. But then if you're in there if you're a 2 seed playing 1 seed with Paul Skeens, maybe you do say, we'll let you guys have this one, and then.
But the only thing about that is LSU's bullpen has been so up and down and shaky that you really don't know what you're going to get from him sometimes. And anybody can beat anybody if you walk. And I think that was been Ty Floyd's Achilles heel is he walks a ton of people. So I could see them wanting to use Skeens in game 1 just to kind of keep the mojo rolling. But yeah, I mean, it does bring up a very interesting debate with Jay Johnson, and that's why he makes the big bucks. I don't think I would do that, but.
And then you have the same debate in a super regional where if you take a gamble on game 1, if you had to pick a game of the super regional to bank a win, it would probably be game 2 because game 3 isn't guaranteed. You win game 2, you're at worst, you're playing a game 3 to go to Omaha. So there's a lot of psychology involved, and I don't think coaches generally overthink it, but it's going to be interesting to see if they shake that up at all. Because usually if you take a pitcher off his schedule once, you kind of have to keep him off his schedule so you can kind of get him comfortable because pitchers are so weird.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's worked with Watts Brown at Oklahoma State. They've definitely kind of moved him around from Sunday to Saturday, and then now back to Friday finally. So I mean, there is kind of a little bit of precedent, but I mean, Paul Skeens is so good.
Yeah, yeah. I assume they'll go the softball route and just throw them all 3 games of a super regional.
I wish he was like Jerangelo, where he could throw like left-handed, so he could throw on left-handed on Saturday.
Yeah. Another one of these series where there's a quote unquote good team playing a nobody Miami over Presbyterian. The Blue Hose, one of the cooler nicknames, but Miami has a lot of those themselves.
Yeah, really good game for Miami, where again these ones can kind of sneak up on you, especially with Virginia Tech having the doubleheader today. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But again, Miami taking care of business, beating these kind of midweek teams, hurting their RPI. I mean, you love to see it as an SEC fan.
Yeah, it's good for everybody all around. I know Miami's right on that fringe of hosting, and playing Presbyterian isn't going to help that conversation at all. So if you go out and beat a top 25 team, you're going to jump Miami this week, no problem.
Yeah, and that Florida, the way Florida's kind of dominated is almost kind of helping Miami, because that series, as time goes on, that series just gets better and better for them, even though they lost.
Speaking of good series, or should I say bad series, Connecticut, as you pointed out, they had to come back against Seton Hall. I don't necessarily say that a first 4 innings is worthy of the word comeback, but
They gave up 7
they were
runs in
losing.
4 innings. I mean, that's worrisome against Seton Hall.
Well, that Big East is such a gauntlet.
Seton Hall isn't bad, but they're about what you think a team from New Jersey would be, is the best way to describe them.
Really fun to watch in a Fayetteville regional. Appy State, hold your noses, Michigan fans. Goes into Coastal Carolina and holds Coastal to 1 hit.
I think that is not very telling of Coastal Carolina, and I think it's more of an anomaly. I mean, if you're going to lose, like, it counts the same as getting walked off in the bottom of the 9th on the scorebook. And they had a whole bunch of stats about it was like the first ranked App State win in like X amount of years, first double-digit ranked win ever. And I mean, some history was made, but I think Coastal is still the class of the Fun Belt there. I think that they're going to be fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they came back and won the next 2. And App State, I mean, if you're going to be bad, be bad. Like, the losses count the same.
Yeah, if you're down 6-0 in the 3rd inning, hey, well, we'll go take the next 2. Send the backups. Let the walk-ons get a few at bats, but moderately concerning for them just from a resume perspective. But I think they'll be fine the rest of the weekend, like you do. Stanford, Arizona State. This was one that I had circled as kind of the national game of the week or series of the week. And if you had told me that the final score would be 8-6, I would have said, "Oh, you mean on Saturday or Sunday?" Not the game that Quinn Matthews was pitching. But it was nice to see the Stanford bats wake up. I would have preferred they didn't do it against what many are calling my Sun Devils.
Yeah, and this one did kind of feel good for all those people that really like Stanford and have wanted more out of their offense. I mean, 8 runs against a very talented Arizona State pitching staff. A little bit worrisome from Quinn Matthews, but I think that it was more on the bullpen and less on him. But again, I think that the key to this team is Braden Montgomery and Bowser and Eddie Park. I think I saw Eddie Park being ranked as one of the best center fielders in the nation. Tommy Troy, I think, is one of the best second basemen. I would play 3rd. But, I mean, they have a ton of draft talent, and they're a very boring, like, academic type team. And this is actually my first chance to watch them, just because I'd never get their games. And I came away thoroughly impressed with their approaches at the plate. I mean, they had a plan and they stuck to it.
Yeah, they have all the pieces to be that Stanford team that we expect to just run up the score on teams and then sneak their way into like a top 3 or 4 overall seed, and everybody just kind of takes their word for it because we're box score watching. But last night they got on that bigger kind of TV scale, and people were more likely to tune in, and they looked impressive against a pretty good Arizona State team. But I think the real question will be, what do they do the next 2 days without Quinn Matthews on the mound? But if you score 8 runs, you're going to do fine in a lot of games. But we almost expect like 16 from Stanford. But, baby steps, because they've been shut out far too many times this season.
And from a national perspective, I think Arizona State, it's good to kind of see them back, but I'm really excited to see how they handle a regional because I think that that's going to tell us how strong the Pac-12 was. Is Arizona State's going to kind of be that barometer? Because I mean, again, they looked horrible when they went to Mississippi State. Now they're one of the best teams in the pack.
Yeah, they're a little weird. I think that they're very similar to Clemson, but they peaked a little earlier than Clemson in the sense that they're a
Yeah,
year ahead of schedule.
and the Clemson, like they're kind of bad losses against UCF, and it came out that that UCF was rolling bats and cheating. So that one really doesn't look as bad as it did when it was happening.
Yeah, weird tangent there, but I wonder if the committee will consider that at all when it comes to ranking Clemson. Maybe if they're if they get hot late, if they're like right on the edge of hosting or not. Well, does that UCF series really hurt them? Because UCF was juicing the bats.
Yeah, and the committee also uses very different like metrics. Like I remember one year they put TCU in because of past tournament history. So it's not an exact science or even a mathematical formula. It's an eye test thing, and Clemson definitely passes the eye test along with Arizona State.
Yeah, eye test galore is every time Arkansas plays a bad team. Uh, Arkansas taking it to right to Mississippi State last night, but it was a little bit of a slow start for them. They were losing 3-2 in the fifth, and then they pulled away after that to win 6-2. The story of the night was kind of off the field, right around it. There was a high speed chase through Starkville, and although reports are saying that the high speed chase was actually like 30 miles an hour, but either way, an ambulance ended up hitting the Arkansas team bus. You wonder if that's like an omen. It's kind of like a joke, like, oh, look, half your team's in the hospital, or if this is like the sacrifice that Arkansas needed to kind of coast the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think I've said it all year that Arkansas isn't headlined by big names like they've had in the past. Um, and they just seem to go out and absolutely dominate and win every game. I mean, this one really didn't even feel as close as it did. And I came away thoroughly impressed with the Arkansas pitching staff, limiting a very good Mississippi State team to only 2 runs. And the flip side of that is I think Mississippi State's pitching staff limiting Arkansas to only 6 runs after all that's happened with them. I think that you have to feel like I'll call it a Nathan Dittmer A, and we'll hint on that more when we get into A&M Florida. But I felt really good about the Mississippi State pitching staff.
Yeah, it was a little bit of an upgrade, but Mississippi State only getting 2 hits. I think they were both from Colton Ledbetter. The rest of the lineup has to be able to do something if they want to win some games here. But there was a little bit of a different energy in that stadium last night. It was loud. They had a reason to be a little bit excited. They still have a winning record. Conference, of course, they're 10 games below 500.
I don't know where to put the Mississippi State because it feels like that they could backdoor into the tournament. It feels like they could backdoor into Hoover, but they're just not a good baseball team anymore. And it's kind of a sad sight to see with where they were on that crazy 5-year run when they went Rooker to Mangum to Rowdy Jordan, and then now to see where they are now is just sad.
Yeah, they're one of those programs that when you're scrolling through ESPN Plus, you always want to click on them because you know it's going to be a good environment, a talented team, but it's just so strange to see them kind of in this place where you know they're not going to win.
They're in purgatory. They're just kind of wandering around.
Yeah. But looking at pulling up the stats here, did you know? So you got to have at least 12 SEC wins to make the NCAA tournament. 11 or fewer, 0 have made the tournament. 0. That's all. That's 0 for 57 plus counting as many as last year. Once you win that 12, you have a 18% chance. And then once you hit 13 wins, that's a 39% chance. 14 wins, 67%. 15, 73. And then as soon as you hit 16, you're in. You can lose out the rest of the way. Vandy's already at 16. I know they were a couple weekends ago. I'm sure LSU has reached that point. I think they were 1 away when I looked, and it's been a while.
Yeah, I think they're in. I think Florida's in, I believe, as well. And I mean, they've been in for like months.
Yeah.
Florida's at 15, so they're pretty much in.
They'll be in today. Not to jinx your Aggies, Jake. Speaking of teams in the tournament, Vandy 4-1 over Alabama. It was great to see Alabama take game 1 in that series, just kind of for the emotions of it all. But Vanderbilt kind of reminded them who's in charge. Alabama scored or just produced 2 hits. Enrique Bradfield had a very cool catch, kind of like Willie Mays over the shoulder.
Yeah, this one kind of reminded me of that first weekend in Arlington for Vanderbilt. I mean, they come out, play absolutely embarrassing on Friday night, and we're like, oh, it's the beginning of the end for Vandy. Alabama's got magic, and then Vandy just absolutely goes out and wins a Tim Corbin type game, only allowing one run. Tucking the shirt in, tightening the belt, saying, "Let's head to the bar and get some old fashions, boys."
Yeah, not much else to say. This is just your classic. This is what I thought the series would be. I know that when you said that we should pick Vandy, Alabama for our pick 'em, I said something like, I don't have batteries rolling around my head, so I'd never pick Alabama. But the emotions of last night, I did try and get on Alabama money line, but for some reason the sport books weren't offering Alabama games at the time. But I think Vandy will go ahead and win today and take care of that series. But it was nice to see that emotional win for Alabama on
Yeah,
Friday.
and from a coaching standpoint from Alabama, we're hearing Bruce Bochy might be in the mix, the Rangers coach.
Yeah, okay. I hear Joe Girardi is
Yeah,
going to
Joe Girardi.
coach the pitching staff. Pitching staff puzzling South Carolina at Kentucky. Will Sanders kind of gets roughed up again. He has these weird games where he goes and looks dominant, and then he has these games where he just looks kind of like an average pitcher, which is not what we expected from a South Carolina team that has a number 4 next to their name, and I think we even have him a little bit higher than that. Kentucky,
yeah, we have him at 4.
Okay.
At 4.
Kentucky's a very weird team for me. I don't think they're any good, but last night they looked pretty good.
Yeah, they played the part last night. I mean, they rode kind of the wave of South Carolina punching back and then kind of came back and dominated. I think they had a bunt single that kind of got it all started. So very fitting for Kentucky that they had a bunt. And I think that this is just backlog from all the injuries that South Carolina has had. I mean, they've had a few guys step up and play above their weight class. And I think that this is just kind of the magic dust wearing out. They have a little bit more scouting report on some of these fringe guys that South Carolina has. But I think that all South Carolina needs to do is really get healthy and they'll be fine. I think that Kentucky, if they win this series, they're pretty much a lock to be in the tournament as well. With which, I mean, a month ago it seemed like a sure thing, and in the last few weeks it's been kind of shaky. But I mean, a series win over the number 5 team in the country, and not having a terrible record like Georgia, you're pretty much an SEC lock.
Yeah, one more win gives them 13, so they have a chance right now if they were to lose out, and then I think they'll be able to scrape together 3 more wins to get that into that 100% category. Which I don't
believe they were a 13-win team last year that got left out, if memory serves me correct.
That sounds right because they got very hot in Hoover last year.
Them and Bama both got really hot in Hoover.
Florida at A&M. Jake, you were at this one up in the bigwig booth there. Florida kind of looked topsy-turvy a little bit, but then they pulled away. BT Riopel is your father.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting his PhD, it seems like, in baseball. I know that the score line really doesn't say a lot, but I mean, this was a gritty SEC regional type game. It was very back and forth. Florida just had the big hit. I think it was in the 7th, and then their bullpen only allowed 1 hit against A&M. And I came away thoroughly impressed with Jack Caglione, just from a play that he didn't even really it was just a very routine play. So he did a backdoor pick, and he was running, dove, picked it, and then tried to tag him, and in one motion. It was just the cleanest play I'd ever seen. And Nathan Detmer had very high praise for Florida last night in the press conference. He said that was the best lineup that he had faced. I mean, anytime that they missed a pitch, it seemed like they took it out. But again, this is just a gritty SEC win. And for Florida, I mean, it's very, very positive to see that your bullpen kind of go out and shove against an A&M team that kind of gives some teams fits.
Yeah, it was a big win for Florida. Kind of get some consistency because they just got swept by South Carolina last time they hit the road. A&M is kind of the definition of floating around that, 2, maybe even a low or a high 3 range. Very, very hard to get a hold of, Jake. How are you feeling as an Aggie fan? Because hosting is 100% out of the question.
Yeah. I don't know. They've lost 5 SEC games in a row, and they have a horrible, horrible non-conference slate with some of the losses that they have. And granted, the losses that they're losing to Arkansas, who's probably going to host. They're losing to Florida, who's most definitely going to host. So they're not terrible losses, and they've been competitive in every game. I think that they've had the tying or go-ahead run at the plate in all of those games late. It's just that they've been just right there, which as a fan is really frustrating, but it's just one of those things where you just have to ride the wave. If they get hot, I think that they have the talent to kind of even make it to Omaha. but they also have the one hit away and the non-clutchness to completely miss the tournament. I mean, yeah, I can't get a read on this team.
All right, another one of your teams, Boston College, getting blanked by Wake Forest. I know they're all of a sudden they have a little bit of an injury bug situation going on, but Wake not really afraid of this Boston College team that is still ranked really highly by some outlets, and I think that they're unranked in some, and then I'm not even sure where we have them at, but I know that
we have them at 19, sandwiched between Texas Tech and Louisville.
Yeah, I'm ready to drop them out.
I think that this is another one where, kind of like Tennessee, Georgia, where if you would have told us at the beginning of the year that Wake Forest would beat Boston College 6-0, we'd have been like, yeah, that's expected. But from a hitting standpoint, I think that this is very, very worrisome if the Travis Honeyman injury ends up being more long term, because their lineup is completely different. I mean, he is kind of the catalyst in there. He kind of sets the tone for them, and that's the only thing that kind of makes me worried. Is there's a lot of injury bugs. I'm like, okay, like they have depth, but Boston College lives and dies by Honeyman.
Yeah, I know that you had your saying for them earlier in the year, but they've kind of developed a few pieces around him, but it's still a Travis Honeyman show.
Mhm.
And that was tough news when you broke it, because you knew that Wake Forest was going to have little to no problem taking care of business, and I think they've got a good chance of sweeping.
Yeah, and the only thing that I worry about with Wake Forest is they haven't lost any series, and it seems like cough cough Tennessee. That's always a bad sign. Is you always have to have like that one get right loss. I mean, DVH has kind of figured it out almost to a science, and Wake Forest doesn't have that. They've just gone out and curb stomped every single team that they've played.
All right, that is our we ran through the top 25 there. I think we hit them all. Jake, it's kind of turned into one of our more famous segments here. Who did something cool?
Oh, we're not gonna do pick'ems.
Whoa!
Not yet. Who did something cool?
Jake, you have anything?
I did. No, I added it to our notes. Going way out in left field. Miami of Ohio, walking off Akron. Always love a good walk off. But I mean, really back and forth game. They won 13-12. It kind of looked like a Diamond Dynasty type game. So shout out to Miami of Ohio for walking off Akron.
Yeah. My something cool is, and I was worried you were going to say it when you went out of left field there. Hofstra, Brad Camarda threw a no-hitter yesterday afternoon over Monmouth. Another one we've seen two no-hitters in a row now where they gave up a run at the same times, which is my favorite kind of no-hitter. But he also went a full 9 innings, so this was not a combined no-hitter, which is getting really common. This is a true no-hitter, which I know some people say that a combined no-hitter is just really not even a no-hitter. I agree it's less cool, so this one definitely takes the cake in the no-hitter department
So
for me.
is this just the most uncool no-hitter because he gave up a run? And
No, this is the most cool one, Jake.
The most cool one.
He went 9 innings, and he still gave up a run.
All right, no, without looking, where is Hofstra and where is Monmouth?
Oh, so I believe Monmouth is in Ohio.
Let me see. I'm looking up Hofstra first because this is on the spot. Because I had a friend go play at Hofstra and I never knew where it was.
If I had to guess with Hofstra, I'm going to say like a Pennsylvania.
Hofstra's on Long Island, and
Long Island.
Monmouth is located along New Jersey's northern coastline.
Wow. Okay, so not Ohio.
No, I think these are two New York teams, I believe. Which, hey, I know where Akron is and I know where Miami is.
Yeah, my answer, Ohio. All right, Jake. Now you can get that pick 'em up on the screen.
All right,
it's a shame we don't have any public standings, but I can tell you that neither of us are winning.
Hey, this is a comeback week. I mean, we're 1-0 right now.
Yeah. People forget that these other guys don't count if they get them right because they weren't here.
Because there's no way to prove it.
Yeah. Well, Jake, I was
going to say, we kind of skipped over this one.
Yeah, Cal State Fullerton, TCU. Big one for really both teams because TCU is trying to sit on that bubble there, and then Cal State Fullerton is trying to even get into that hosting conversation. They might be that mystery West Coast team that we were talking about. I know that you were high on Cal State Fullerton, and I'm glad I picked them, not only because they won last night, but because of this very cool logo I might have to like look into some shirts with that logo on it. That's very cool.
I looked into it. They do not have any.
Oh,
I was very disappointed.
I wish I picked TCU.
I mean, this one. I mean, I remember on the spaces you laughed at me when I said that there were going to be 3 Big West teams, and I think Fullerton beating TCU kind of boosts everybody's RPI around them. So I know that SEC fans always get clowned for saying games are bigger for the conference, but this really did feel like a big like series weekend for the Big West in general. And then TCU. I mean, what more can you say about them? I mean, they've just kind of been just bad enough to lose. I mean, they haven't looked at bad at any of their series. They've been competitive. They just can't get the big hit.
Yeah, I did see Braden Taylor hit a homer last night, which was good to see because I know that you were talking about kind of his struggles in the spaces this week. But yeah, I feel good about Fullerton taking one of the next 2 to win the series.
Yeah, especially with TCU at home, and it seems like they're almost going to try and fiddle with some stuff because they're going to need a big run at Big 12 play. This might be play into Fullerton's hand. And then AJ, I'm sure, would say something about TCU being a quality baseball club.
Yeah, this one was pretty straightforward. Boston College struggling. Wake Forest is what we keep kind of saying, the most complete team in the country. This was an easy pick for, it looks like, all of us.
Yeah, this was a really easy pick for me, and I'm really looking for Wake Forest to kind of be that 1 seed so we can get LSU to Omaha. And it starts with them sweeping and LSU not sweeping as much as they have been. And this is a great start for Wake in terms of that. And then I'm sure Alex would say something about that too. So I kind of stole that from Alex.
I'm surprised I'm the only one on Arizona State here because Stanford has been not necessarily struggling in the wins department, but they've been winning ugly, whereas ASU is capable of scoring 15 runs a game. I said that we were going to lose last night, so I'm fine with this one. Forks up the next 2 games. We got it.
I know you called it with Mark's bachelor party a few weeks ago with Oregon State, but I think that makes me worried that they allowed 8 runs on Friday for Arizona State because that is supposed to be their best staff, and Stanford's not supposed to be this big hitting team. And that's the only thing that kind of makes me worried, and why I really wanted to go with Stanford is I think that Stanford has been the class of the Pac-12, and they kind of show why with Bowser and Troy. And Arizona State, I think, is just good because the rest of the Pac-12 is so bad.
Yeah, whatever, Jake.
Roll right along onto the next one.
Oh, my God.
Again.
That's right. I'm actually 1-0 in this one. This was a big one for USC. I, of course, was on the 7 teams in the Pac-12 making the tournament. I kind of needed this one. Still not over yet. We got to win one more, but I'm feeling good because Oregon is just a little too overrated for me.
Yeah, and I cannot get a read on this Southern Cal team. I think I've just been burned by them too many times in the past, so I wanted to get off them here. And I thought Oregon would play a little bit better than they would because they are in that topic of conversation for hosting, and this is a great chance to boost it. And freshman for USC, it was just a perfect storm, and it ended up being too perfect, and I jinxed them.
Yeah, I'm sure Mark would have a lot to say about this one, given it's 2 Pac-12 teams. Yeah, I'm sure Mark is probably trying to sneak away to go to this one. I don't know how close he's going to be, but I know he's flying into California today.
He's in San Francisco.
It's all so, it's like Texas. Everything's right by each other.
This was another kind of easy one for me because I know a lot of Arkansas fans were really worried about this, but I think that they just had too much PTSD at Dudy Noble, that this is not the Dudy Noble of old, that this is going to be an Arkansas one.
Yeah, Dudy Noble still houses a great crowd, but it does not house a great team right now. And Arkansas is a program that is kind of built on, like you said earlier, having that one signature series loss where it looks really bad, and then they go ahead and do Arkansas things the rest of the way. This one, I was feeling that momentum on Twitter with both fan bases, kind of like, yeah, Mississippi State's going to win. It's not going to happen.
I liked all the edits of Lounge Dog that they put on like fat people, and I mean credit to him for I think he posted a few pictures of him and he's lost a ton of weight. But every time I see those just make me laugh. They shouldn't be as funny as they are.
I know Lounge was hosting some Arkansas guys out there, so he's trying to mend any damage he's done with the Arkansas fan base.
That's the great thing about being bad is that people just feel sorry for you. So there's no hate between Arkansas and Mississippi State anymore.
I'm sure it'll be back soon.
I think we're getting into the Jake segment of the show.
Yeah, this is. I don't even know. I think Northeastern won, if I remember
They
right,
did.
because I saw you tweet about it.
They did. And this is actually a surprising one that UNCG, after their TCU series, when they've quietly been tied for first in the Colonial Athletic, which they won. Where is it? 8-2. So Northeastern came out and dominated, got a big win that they needed to, and I think that Northeastern is kind of playing their way almost into 3 territory.
Can you describe a situation to me where you would be loudly tied for first in the Colonial? Like you said they're quietly. I don't know.
The SEC, like everybody in the SEC knows that you're in first. Like even if you're in second, I mean you can be loudly in second in the SEC. So you can, I mean this, and then we'll get into it later with Florida Gulf Coast. I mean there's a lot of these teams where you just almost pencil them in to be running away with it. And a lot of these fringe teams are keeping it close and kind of giving them a run for their money. So this one, and then the whack with GCU a couple months ago, where Sam was quietly beating them. You could definitely be loudly in first.
Okay.
Alex, for some reason, I guess he just wanted to see the logo, and he forgot to delete it.
Well, same with you over here. Although, didn't Stetson win last night?
I think that they did, actually.
I saw that they were up late. I only assumed that they won. But I picked FGCU simply because they're
they won
in the top 30 or so. Wow.
I know.
Big win for your Stetson Hatters.
I know, the Mad Hatters.
Which that is a cool logo given their name.
They are now tied for first in the Atlantic Sun. And I don't think anybody other than Florida Gulf Coast homers, I don't think anybody even realized that. What was that big win? Oh, yeah, that Florida State one where they went in and beat 2 of 3, and then ended up just being, Florida State absolutely is terrible at baseball.
Yeah.
But from an RPI standpoint, FGCU sits at 61, while Stetson sits at 151. So a little bit of an upset, but this one will be kind of one to keep an eye on down the stretch. Because if Stetson ends up winning this series, I think that actually almost hurts their tournament chances. Because FGCU will beat them in the tournament. That seems just how it always works out with these smaller conferences. No, do you know where Stetson is? What state?
South Carolina.
It's in Florida.
That was my guess, but I didn't want to be too quirky. Another one I have no idea who won. I was watching this game and it was tied 1-1.
Houston won. Houston won 5-3.
Of course they did. It's nice to be on the same side as AJ because he's leading this pick'em, but I would rather be on the winning side.
Yeah, I mean this Houston team has looked really, really good at times. The few times that I've seen them, they've honestly looked like a tournament team. The LSU transfer Zach Arnold provides a ton of stability for them at third, which I mean I bet you LSU fans wish they had his defense. And then Malachi Lott has been the poor man's Caglione. He pitches and hits for him. And then Drew Bianco on his 10th year. Just like his dad last year, he's starting to heat up in May. On Tuesday, he had 2 doubles and robbed a home run. And I think that this Houston team is a lot closer to being in the tournament than ECU is. I think that they would beat ECU again. Hot take.
Yeah, that is something. I don't know. But this American Conference is so goofy.
We had Wright State and the Northern Kentucky Norse, 2 teams that are both tied for first in the Horizon League.
Okay, Jake, tell us what happened last night.
Wright State won 14-5.
That's right. Raider game.
Raider game. I don't know why that they're the Raiders but have a dog. that is just beyond me. Why don't they have like a pirate or something?
Yeah, I don't know, but the dog just took down whatever the Norse is. Is that like Vikings? So
I think it's just like Northern European people. So they just took out a bunch of like Swedes. I don't think it's Vikings.
Okay.
No, where is Wright State?
Is it one of those like Kentucky / Ohio's?
I believe. Let me see. It is in Ohio.
Is it like Cincinnati or is it like deep in Ohio?
Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah,
Again, I
okay.
don't know why that they're the Raiders, and then their school logo, I think, has a plane. What is the school? Yeah, their school logo. So their sports logo is the dog. Their school logo is a picture of the Wright brothers plane. So I guess there's some affiliation with the Wright brothers.
Huh, okay.
Well, if they make the tournament, well, I'll do a deep dive
Well,
on
they
the
make the
history.
tournament like every year. They're always in a regional.
I know, and they always go 0-2.
Yeah. I think they beat they won a game in Louisville's regional like a long time ago.
I think that they were in a state regional because I remember they like came and hung out because they had ambitious travel plans that they were going to be there until Monday. So they kind of just went to the dude and hung out because there's really nothing else to do in Starkville.
Okay. You sound like Brad Bohannon. Um, that's the end of our pick 'em there?
Let me see. I believe so, but yes, that is the end.
All right. I don't know how many of these questions we can dive into. It's already 11:01 here. We kind of already touched on Louisville. How much trouble is Louisville in? Um, we kind of said that they're in like a medium amount of trouble here, but at the same time, if they win another series or two, they might host. They're
I
the definition
yeah,
of that ACC puzzle.
I think it would take a catastrophic failure of biblical proportions for them to miss the tournament. But I mean, they keep losing all these series that they should win. So I don't really know how to feel about them.
Yep, well said. Has Tennessee found themselves again, and are they bound for Omaha?
Yes and yes.
I agree. Yes and yes. I think that I would like to see them beat another good team and then really lock me in, but Tennessee looks very back to me, and they don't have the pressure that last year's team had with that one seed curse. With all the injuries to Arkansas and South Carolina, does it hurt their chances to be a national seed? I'm a little worried about South Carolina right now because they keep losing to bad teams. It's different when you're losing games to good teams, but when you're losing to Auburn and now Kentucky, who I do consider to be a bad team, I'm worried that those injuries are going to cost them. Arkansas, I think, is fine because Arkansas kind of loves adversity.
Arkansas, yes. South Carolina, Oh wait, no, hold on. South Carolina, yes. Arkansas, no. Because South Carolina, at the same time, they haven't played very good away from home in the SEC, and we saw with what they did to Texas Tech last year that the committee actually looked at the home and road splits, and South Carolina just doesn't have the road wins, and they have to go at Arkansas next weekend, and I think that that's going to be very, very worrisome for them, and it does have to kind of hurt their chances to be national seeds because I think that they can't just have 5 SEC teams in a row either. They always kind of try and sprinkle in an overrated Texas team or something like that.
How much does last night's loss hurt Coastal and their chances of hosting or even being a national seed?
0. I think that I think that well, actually, I don't think that they were ever a national seed. So still 0 because it was you can't go from 0 to 0 in terms of math. But I think Coastal's still your host because I think it's one of those Sun Belt teams that has to host. And with how deep that conference is with Texas State and Southern Miss and even Troy to some extent, I think that they have the depth of being in a dominant conference to still make it as a seed.
Yeah, I tend to agree that they'll be just fine as a top 16. They're going to be looking for, like you just said, they're going to be looking for those alternates between the SEC teams, and they're going to want one of those, maybe even two of those mid majors. And I think Campbell and CCU have such a lead over East Carolina that they're going to be a-okay. And even if they are like a 2 seed, they're still going to be like one of the best 2 seeds. So they're going to have a pretty easy path being a 2 seed in the worst 1 seeds regional.
I think too the other thing is Fullerton doesn't have to play a conference tournament, so they're not going to get that kind of late season boost that a lot of these other teams could get by beating teams in their conference. So, and I know in the past the committee's kind of punished Santa Barbara, so I think that they're going to be fine, and unless it's some geographic reason because there's so many good teams in the Carolinas, I think they'll be fine.
Yep. And we saw them punish the Pac-12 historically for that, and now the Pac-12 has a tournament because of it. You already talked about your Miami, Ohio walking off Akron deal. done enough of that. Is UCLA? You just added this. Is UCLA in
I did
trouble
not add that. Someone else
in
added that.
in regards to making the tournament? Losing last night did not help their resume. I think they are in deep trouble of missing the tournament, but they're kind of propped up by the fact that their name is UCLA. If their name was the team that they just lost to last night, Cal, they would probably be viewed as a team that wouldn't be in the tournament. It's like that bullet point with TCU that one year that you mentioned with the
Yeah. It's a past tournament.
past tournament success will help UCLA for now.
And again, they have to put West Coast teams in. They can't just not do it. Even for as bad as they kind of seem to be this year, they have to add a West Coast team, which again, I think it's going to hurt NC State. It always seems to come down to NC State's.
Yeah, the NCAA does not like NC State, and frankly, NC State is not a tournament team in my eyes, but they might be right now, right on the good side. But eventually, when you have to choose between a seventh team from the Carolinas or a first team from the state of Arizona,
They hate
AIDS,
NC State.
Arizona.
They hate Tennessee, and they hate Texas A&M in that order.
Okay, yeah, nobody hates A&M, but that's the program for us. Hopefully, the rest of the gang is back next week, or at least two more. Again, you never see Jake and I quit to go watch somebody's softball game. I have a daughter.
Yeah, we're married to the game. We're gonna be in the spaces later tonight, so come out, hang out, bring us all your questions. Arkansas fans, bring your computer capabilities if you want to find my IP address. Or you can just DM me and I'll give you my address. I live in a gated community, so no worries for me.
You would live in a gated community.
Well, one more thing. Want to thank our sponsor, Home Field Apparel. Use code CBC15 to get 15% off your first order. They got a ton of stuff. Any teams that you like. Noah, I think you just ordered one of those bass fishing shirts, didn't you?
No, I ordered a UC Irvine shirt and then also an Austin P shirt. And then the next day they added the bass fishing. So I'm going to have to go back and buy that one. But maybe if they add another cool shirt, like that way I can buy two.
They have the Vandy Boys hoodie. That one's pretty comfy. I got one of those.
Yeah, I'm not
Vandy
that
boy?
rich, so I can't.
And it's in khaki color too.
Of course.
I believe that's all we have time for. Noah, any closing remarks?
No, just hope everybody is enjoying playing softball with their kids and enjoyed this train wreck. We had a pretty steady audience the whole time.
We had a fun time, but we'll see everybody next Saturday and in the spaces tonight. Feel free to come hang out. See y'all.